Hey everyone, Chang here and welcome to my channel. This is the Bare Minimum Algebra series. Today we are focusing on how to solve inequalities. Now, here's the thing. This one is mainly focused on solving inequalities with one variables. It's actually very similar to solving a linear equation with one variable. However, you can actually translate the skills to solving it with multiple variables. But since we're focusing on one variable, let's look at the basic steps. Right? So solving inequalities, first and foremost, once again, very similar to solving with linear equations. We're going to simplify both sides using all the tricks that we have with order of operations, PEMDAS, and all the different properties of algebra, of integers. Now, after we simplify both sides to its most simple form, right? What you're going to do next is you're going to add or subtract depending on the problem to isolate the variables on one side and everything else on the other. Very similar, right? So you might have a coefficient, some number in front of the variable with the variables, but everything else should be on the other side, right? Think of it as solving an equation, right? That's exactly what we're doing. Then afterwards, you're going to multiply or divide to get the variable by itself. If the coefficient in front of the variable is an invisible one, basically it's just a variable, you're fine. You don't have to do step 3. If it is not, if there is some number in front of the variable, then you want to get rid of it by either multiplying or dividing. And that's how you would do it with step 3. Now, here's a little caveat, okay? This right here is what's different from solving a basic equation. When you multiply or divide by a negative number, you have to switch the inequality symbol. Now, what does that mean? That means that if it is a greater than, and you multiply both sides by a negative number or divide both sides by a negative number, then the greater than symbol has to be switched to a less than symbol. If it was greater than or equal, then it's going to be switched to a less than or equal, and vice versa. Less than becomes greater than, less than or equal becomes greater than or equal. And this is only if you are multiplying and dividing both sides by a negative number, right? It's not that, oh, it happens to be a negative number on one side and you just multiply it by some positive number and you switch it. Don't do that. It's going to cause error. If you are multiplying or dividing both sides by a negative number, then you switch the inequality symbol. So let's look at some examples on how to do that. All right, so the first one is fairly simple. So we're looking at this one. You have 2 times the quantity of x minus 1 is greater than 4. Now, first step, we simplify as much as we can on both sides. 4 is by itself, can't do much with that. We can simplify this using the distributive property. Basically, we're going to get 2 and we're going to multiply it into these two things. So that's going to be 2x minus 2 is greater than 4. Now, after that, you can't simplify anymore, so there it is. That is our first step that we've completed, right? So we're just treating this greater than as an equal sign right now. Doesn't really matter, right? We're just leaving it as is. Now, the next step, step 2, is add or subtract some number to isolate basically the variable by itself. It has a coefficient of 2 in front of it, but we have this, minus 2, negative 2, however you want to see it. It's messing it up. We don't like it. We want to move it to the other side. So we do the opposite, right? So in this case, since it's a minus 2, we're going to add 2, and we're going to do it to this side as well. This goes away. We have 2x greater than, and then 4 plus 2 is 6. Simple as that. And then afterwards, the last step, step 3, is when we're multiplying or dividing to make sure that we only have x. We don't want a 2x. So since it is multiplying 2, we're going to do the opposite. We're going to divide by 2 or multiply by 1/2, however you want to think about it. I divide by 2 on both sides, and then that goes away. Now you just have x, and then 6 over 2 is 3. And since we are multiplying or dividing by a positive number, the symbol stays the same. So it's going to just be x is greater than 3. And then, of course, the problem is probably okay, just like that, unless, your instructor or whatsoever wants you to graph it. Then, I have another video on how to graph inequalities. There's your first example. All right, this second one is fun, a little more challenging, but we can still do it, right? So, once again, step 1, simplify both sides This is a 10 by itself. Doesn't matter, can't do anything about it. This one we can simplify. We've noticed that these guys actually can be combined together, right? Combined like terms. I have another video on that. Check it out, right? So it's going to be 2x minus 5x, which gives us a negative 3x plus 4 less than or equal to 10. Okay? Can't simplify anything else at this point. So we're just going to do step 2, add or subtract to get the variable and their coefficient by itself and everything else on the other side. We have a plus 4, we don't want that. So we're going to do the opposite. Subtract 4, subtract 4. This goes away. Now we have negative 3x is less than or equal to 6. Okay? Now, the last step, step 3, we want to get rid of that negative 3 in front of the x. We just want x by itself. Since it is multiplying, we can divide or times a negative 1 over 3. Your choice. I just like thinking of it as division instead. So divide by negative 3, divide by negative 3. This goes away. You have your x. 6 divided by negative 3 is just negative 2. Now, here's the caveat. I want you to pay attention. Notice that we are dividing by negative number on both sides. So this is a less than or equal to, right? Now we have to change it greater than or equal to, right? That's the best way to remember so that you have the correct answer. If you don't change it, the answer is going to be incorrect. The best way to test it out is you could just pick a number and then plug it into the original inequality and see if that statement is true. Right, this one is fairly simple. A number greater than negative 2 is 0. Right, you put in 0, these guys all go away. And if 4 is less than or equal to 10, yes, that makes sense. If you forget to change the inequality and all of a sudden you have to pick something, negative 3, for example, right, is less than or equal to negative 2. Negative 3, that's going to be negative 6, and then that's going to be 15. So negative 6 and 15, that's 9. 9 plus 4 is 13. That is not less than or equal to 10. So that's wrong, right? So don't do that. Make sure you switch the inequality if you're multiplying or dividing by a negative number. So there you have it. That wasn't too bad. Wasn't too complicated, right? Very simple. Kindergarten work. All right, so what did we do? There was 3 steps. The first one, once again, you're simplifying both sides of the inequality. You treat the inequality symbol as an equal sign right now. Doesn't matter. Just simplify both sides, right? Secondly, after everything is as simple as it can get, you're adding or subtracting to isolate the coefficient and the variable by itself, everything else on the other side. Then, thirdly, if the coefficient is not an invisible one, if it's not just a variable by itself, then you are multiplying or dividing to make sure that it is just a variable by itself and everything else is on the other side. Now, remember the caveat here is that if you are multiplying or dividing by a negative number, then you got to switch the inequality symbol to make sure that you are correct. So those are the 3 easy steps to solving inequalities with one variable. Thank you for watching. If you haven't already, please like, comment, and subscribe. I will see you in the next video.